everyone, and welcome back to another university segment of the RI 2020 virtual conference. This is series 2 of our virtual conference series, Disrupting the System. And today I am interviewing Luis Osta. He's the former president of the UT Dallas Blockchain Club and founder of Valencian Digital. Welcome, Luis.
Hey, Ashlie, how are you doing?
Thanks for coming on. For anyone just tuning in, we want to thank you for listening and let you know that we also did another interview with the UT Dallas students. You can check out on our YouTube page, but we wanted to invite Luis because he is graduating soon, and we've been working together through MouseBelt for over a year now, and just really been enjoying watching your progress and some of the cool stuff you've done with the club. And now that you're close to graduating and you have new officers in the club, wanted to check in and see, what are you working on in the blockchain space and whether you have any advice for students who are going to start entering the job market.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to sit down and talk to y'all.
Yeah, so one thing that I know that you started working on with the club a year ago and got some really great feedback from the students who benefited from it and participated in it in our other interview with UT Dallas students. One of the mentees was telling us what a great time they had in the Surge mentorship programs. Tell us a little bit about that and, as much details as you can, hopefully to inspire other student clubs to do a similar program.
Yeah, for sure. So, Surge was something that was in the works since like the founding of the club, way past before I even joined the club as a lowly marketing officer. I think every club, every student organization has the idea that they want a deep and rich mentorship program that allows people to come into it and grow from it. I think the most difficult part from it is that it requires a lot of planning and a lot of upfront investment. And that's why a lot of clubs aren't able to get that off the ground. So the way that sort of I started on that journey is to, before I try to make this organizational structure, try to get me and my officers to a place where we could actually directly help each other. So by partnering with industry people and with the university, we're able to make sort of pseudo projects and educational initiatives that allowed us to train our own officers and our own people at a place where we felt comfortable they could guide their own mentees and their own students that they could help guide along that journey. So first, I think by developing an actual rich expertise within the club first and within the members that we had at the moment, we were able to use that expertise to actually be able to get this rich mentorship over the line and started building momentum and started getting people involved in, and I've been really happy with the feedback that we're getting from our students because there are other mentorship programs at UT Dallas, but by focusing on building expertise from the inside out, we've been able to have the best success rates and the most enriching experience for the students compared to other mentorship programs that are more shallow, let's say.
And how do you measure success? I believe that you had said before in another conversation with me that you try to track how many job offers or, is there a skill level that you kind of track for whether the mentee got something out of the mentor program?
So we have 3 objective and 3 subjective measures of success, at least from when I was president. The 3 that we measure are I guess they're all to do with career, but the routes that we track most deeply is the startup path, the independent path, and the career path. So pretty early in the process, we determine what the best outcome is for the mentees, right? Some people want to start fast-growing, high-growth startups that want to disrupt the space. I'm sure many of them are here in REIMAGINE. Some of them want to create their own paths, doing independent freelancing or starting an agency or their own small business that is sort of a bit more stable than the startup path, and it is really more about building a reputation and building a wealth and breadth of projects. And the first one is pretty straightforward by getting the career path. So the way we track that is we work pretty personalized with the candidates to figure out what profile fits best for them, and then try to introduce them to the right, we have a tracking system for the people with a career path. We introduce them to contacts that we have developed through our networks. the professional and both the research means. And then we track how they perform there. We make sure that they're well prepared for it, so that whenever they actually get in front of the actual interviewing, it's a lot easier to handle. The startup path is a little harder, but it is easier to measure, because what we can help them without first is that we focus on being able to get them in the door, right? I can't help whether or not they get funding to a certain extent, but by helping them make sure that they get, X amount of, just getting in the pitching room is already difficult enough for many founders. So getting them in the pitching room, like teaching them exactly the ways that the VC world functions. And, there are some ways of getting into a venture capitalist, like getting their interest. There are some ways that work, other ways that don't. And creating them help us strategies, set it up. Usually what we try to aim for is helping our mentees get anywhere from 3 to 5 presentation decks. We have found, I think one of our mentees got in front of 8, which is amazing, right? And we ideally, like my goal initially, and this is something I was really learning past, I wanted to be able to get them in front of like dozens of investors, but I learned pretty quickly that it's very difficult, because that requires because VCs get 1 million people, right? So what you have to focus on isn't like on quantity, but it is on like deeply focusing on quality, right? In a world that everyone is getting spammed with 500,000 emails at all times, right? It's just not going to work if you try to like just reach out to anyone. And so the way we function is by like deeply personalizing what works for that student, and then also deeply personalizing things on the other end to try to make sure that we have a network that is of actual quality. And for the independent career paths, what we try to do with them is it's a longer path, right? We've had 2 mentees who've had success with that. By essentially what we focus them is we try to introduce them to the right networks and the right markets, and then try to get them their first starter projects that then allow them to build a good network of a good sort of portfolio of case studies, and then teach them exactly what are good ways of marketing case studies, what are bad ways of doing it. And the middle one really is the hardest one to pin down, because it really depends on what exactly the mentee in question can most provide value through.
Yeah, I love the Surge program. It's one of the most, hands-on ways of really providing values to students that I've seen at a club. And I think it's really what we try to encourage in any of our industry partners who come on. Everyone's looking for talent, right? This is kind of the inspiration of MouseBelt in the beginning, was a bunch of hackers and developers and startup founders in Silicon Valley hearing about this blockchain thing and hearing, that there was just a lack of developers, and that this was a really lucrative career path. So try to encourage students to look into it and try to support them as they do job hunting. And the industry partners, Icon, Hedera, Stellar, they're all interested in tapping into student talent, and the way that your club is preparing them is just awesome. So I had a couple questions about it. Is this a 1-to-1 pairing? Like they have like kind of one mentor that they look up to?
It's like a 1-to-3 pairing. So I believe that you learn a lot faster in groups, in small, tight-knit groups. That's the way I found that I've learned the best, is through a really tight-knit group of people working together towards a common goal. So we try to keep it to three people, because we find that's the best balance between like collaboration and like a sense of unity that makes it accessible to students, right? Because they don't have a lot of experience working in massive groups. So it's 3, sometimes 4, but we really try to keep it to 3. And they're assigned one direct mentor that manages over that team. And then there is also one director that helps them get connected into specific subject matter experts, specific industry experts, and other specific technologies that they need or specific resources that they need. So that's sort of the general structure. And we keep it fairly small. MouseBelt has been able to do amazing job with scaling it, but that's something that we've really struggled with, I think, is scaling out past like 3 to 5 people. We have found that it's very difficult to scale that quality up much higher than that. You need a lot of the infrastructure and a lot of the planning for that. That's the long-term goal. But so far, by keeping it small, we found that being able to, that's where we're maximizing our value, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's great because one, teaching is the best way to learn something. So you're really making an investment in the strength of your club because the people mentoring are going to just learn by teaching. And then I would imagine that the people who find benefit in the program go on to keep contributing back to the club.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think half our officers used to be former mentees, and the most regular men. I think every single but one of the mentees who I think moved to a different university are active and engaging members. If not in the club, in the blockchain community as a whole. Like it creates a long-lasting connection, a long-lasting network that of people who help each other.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, folks. Any students listening in, really encourage you to take the lead of UT Dallas Blockchain Club and maybe consider some kind of mentorship program like that. My other question about the program is actually more general about life at UT Dallas and in Dallas in general. I know last conference we tried to ask all of the student clubs, what's going on with blockchain on your campus? What's going on with blockchain in your region?
Mm-hmm.
Being able to get startups in front of investors, what is the startup ecosystem like in Dallas? Give us your experience just as far as all things startups and blockchain, both on campus and in the Dallas community.
It's been really fascinating. When I first came to campus here in Dallas, I was originally from Houston, moved here for university. When I first came here, it was pretty slow, I would say. It was a fairly standard to most cities in America, right? Like there's a few things. There's like a few major startups. There's some venture capitalists. There's some emerging technologies. But in the past few years, it has really blown. Like I remember in one of our interviews past, it was like there was no classes at all on blockchain technology, like zero. There are like several now. There's a few more even starting this fall. There is the amount of investment I've seen on startups and on. I think it's been a overall shift I've seen in the startup and venture capitalist community here in Texas as a whole. It has grown significantly from what I've seen in the ground over the past 2 to 3 years to a point where the three major cities, Austin and Dallas, especially here in Texas, have a pretty thriving community, especially surprising the blockchain space and AI and a few other of the emerging markets have been a surprising amount of uptick as there's just, in the Dallas here especially, it's really big in the finance world and blockchain has been starting to really, really take off amongst the more established people as they actually understand the value past the hype. And that's turned into significant investments, both at the university level, at the overall community level, and at the startup level, where over the past year, as that years I've seen like doublings of the number of like actually healthy, successful blockchain startups here in Dallas and Texas as a whole.
Awesome. So you feel like Dallas might be a new like hot startup hub?
I wouldn't say that, but it's warming up. It's warming up. It's come a long way and it seems to show no signs of stopping. I still think it's been in the early stages of of growing into a real presence in the tech space. That's something you've seen for the past 3 years with places in Colorado booming and other places in the Midwest as you see a sort of proliferation of technology away from just the two main hubs in the Americas. But for a technologist out there, I think if you're the kind of person like taking high risks, investing in Dallas or other Texas cities might be a wise maneuver.
Absolutely. It's been great to watch. I started MouseBelt University just interviewing students all over America and determining what the temperature of blockchain was on their campuses. And it seemed like for the last few years, people had started with Bitcoin clubs when Bitcoin was really a hot topic, and that the interest kind of waxed and waned with the price of Bitcoin. But then you had the diehard fans who got really interested in the tech, and the club started focusing more on these, actually learning the tech or applying it to business and starting their own projects. But there still seemed to be a lot of resistance from administrations to really invest. But I've been encouraged over the last 2.5 years, definitely have seen an uptick in courses being offered, and it sounds like Texas is coming along with that as well. So
I was quite a bit surprised. You know, Texas is usually not the first mover in almost anything, but it's this shift in technology has been very interesting to watch for sure.
I know that one of our industry partners, Chain, one of their team was teaching at UT Austin, and they were interested to know more about UT Dallas. So really looking forward to fall semester, as students are going to be looking for more ways to connect with industry, and hoping to do a lot of cool virtual events with, you know, the BEA members. So tell us about Valencian Digital. Is that your company you founded, and is it a blockchain company?
One of the a major part of a lot of our projects usually leverage a blockchain component, like one we just finished, you know, in partnership with Turkey Technologies. It was building out a HR employee recognition platform that leveraged digital identity to be able to, so that you can essentially map over employee recognition from one company to another. So that can be a sort of a continuum of your recognition, so reputation stays with you alongside of it. It was a really interesting project, like a lot of it, but it was, I just saw from a lot of projects and a lot of different people I was involved in, I just saw an opening for a software development company that focused on implementing, that focused on bringing modern and really cutting edge technology in a way that makes sense for businesses. Because the thing that my sort of concern with a lot of the software development culture and a lot of the startup culture is that people take agile to mean let's not care about quality and let's not care about doing things in a way that makes sense. And so you end up seeing things implemented and created and architected in a way that is just nonsensical. It doesn't make sense within business, doesn't make sense within industry. It's insecure. It's basically, it's a house of cards that's gonna break at any moment. So after doing so many projects, different people, and just more and more demand, it made sense to make it into a more official thing and sort of expanding the work we were doing, and, you know, bringing in more people to be able to help, because, you know, I can't do 200 hours a week every week forever, and not quite at that level. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm technically a founder, but, you know, still just a software developer and, you know, a business person. I try to help businesses do better, and that's bringing value is really the thing I've focused on the most in all areas of life, and this is just the new things that I'm doing to try to help people however I can.
So it sounds like you saw a gap in the development philosophy for implementing these kinds of solutions that you were working on, and thought, I could step up and make sure this is done right, and this interests me, and you started a development shop. How many people do you have working with you?
Officially, it's mostly just me. It's 3 to 5, I think, total for the really big projects. That's usually how it ends up going out. Yeah, I mean, whenever it comes out to other areas that I don't have expertise in. So I'm not a UX researcher, I'm not. So certain projects that require that, I have other people that I know that are extremely talented at that, and then I rely on the expertise to take care of those aspects of it. But it's a fairly small team.
Yeah, and how did you find people to work with? For anyone interested in, you know, starting a project, are these all just your friends, or?
The search mentorship program is how I found them. It's really interesting because when you focus on helping people, the benefit I found is in helping people become teaching, right? And helping people become better engineers, better designers, better product managers. Is that now you know a really amazing software engineer, product manager, and designer. And so if you need any of those, now you know them, right? So that's sort of both search mentorship program and through the Toyota project, and just by putting yourself out there and meeting people, and not necessarily asking somebody to do the job perfectly first, but if somebody has the potential, trusting them to be able to grow in their skills when they need to, and be able to, as long as they have the right mindset for it, the specifics are something that people can usually grow into. So that's sort of how I've been able to find my team, is just by you know, you help other people get better, and now you know somebody who's better.
That's great, and a great lesson for anyone embarking on any kind of networking or, my advice to students as far as networking. I'm a big fan of the 5-minute favor. Just always being willing to do those little things like read someone's blog and edit it for them,
Yeah,
or just coming into every scenario thinking, how can I help you? And it turns out
a
that
hundred
by
percent.
teaching
It's
teaching
really funny.
people these principles, in
Mhm.
turn, you get more talented people around you that might be able to help you in the future.
100%. It's the book Give and Take is a lot about this. I'm sure many people have. It's a very popular book. I just find it really funny because the book is basically just like just be a decent person. And it's I think a lot of the times we sort of convince ourselves that in order to be successful in business or in whatever, you have to be like a terrible human being. But it's like that's not really going to work out for you long term. So if you are out there, you have your own startup or business, if you just want to build out your career, just try to be a decent person and try to focus on building and creating things that people love, and it'll work out.
Yeah, and creating the environment for creativity to manifest, which is always best done when you give people a lot of freedom and trust. And
Yeah,
like you said, even if they don't have all the skills right away, let people grow into their roles.
yeah. I find him problematic in many ways, but I believe Mark Zuckerberg at one point said it's like sometimes you have to let people fail now so that whenever they have an actual brilliant idea in the future, they'll actually bring it to you, and then you'll have that brilliant idea, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to let people stumble through their first steps or through a project that you think is maybe not the wisest idea, because that freedom, like you said, is going to give them the creative space to be able to come up with amazing ideas in the future, right? It's taking a long-term view of the world.
Yeah, so great advice for students who might be thinking about how to work with others or start their own companies. You told me about some of the blockchain projects you've worked on. Just wondering if you could give us some of your experience working as a student on blockchain projects. How did you find them? Any advice for students who, want to get their hands dirty and do something similar?
I mean, as I'm sure many people here know, blockchain is still very, very much in its early phases. So it's not just who you know, but it's like what you're known for, right? So the first two major projects I got as through Valencian was through, it was RotoHive and TandaPay respectively. Those are like startup projects, right? And they were like, one of them, it was just some small company sponsored a hackathon, a very minor I think the price was like $1,000, right? Which is like a lot of money, but for hackathon prizes that are usually like 10,000, 20,000, right? And I just talked to the person because I was confused about what the project was actually about, and we just got talking, and then eventually, after the project went through, he liked some of the ideas that I had in mind about like what we would actually have to do to like implement it, and then it went from there, and that's how it went for the other projects, right? The first major project I did, it was just by being in the right places, even if it wasn't something that was like sexy, right? Like there were like 10 people in that hackathon. It was like a 12-hour hackathon. It was very small, sideshow kind of place. But by like going the extra mile, because nobody was talking to this person because it was a very small prize, but actually trying to understand what the problem was and understand like because a lot of times it's not just there's the problem and there's like the actual thing that needs to be solved. And by actually listening, I was able to just come across as like a seemingly intelligent, caring person. And then that's how I got my first project. And then once you go there, the first like major project I got involved in through Toyota was just because I did a favor to one of my professors because he needed somebody to help tutor somebody for blockchain. It was like $20 for like an hour or two, I don't know. And then the former president was also there tutoring. And then behind the scenes, to my not to my knowledge, they were working a deal with Toyota, and then I just got a random call in the middle of the summer during one of my interns. They'd be like, "Hey, we need you in a month to work on this project for like half a year." And none of this makes sense, and it's a lot of luck. Like I will admit, it's a lot of luck, but it is also about putting building the right reputation for yourself, the one that you want to have. And it is also about, so the long story short, it is a lot about luck, and I'm very fortunate, and I'm very I have a lot of gratitude for the fortune that I've had. But it is also about doing the dirty work, and it is also about doing the hard work of being somebody people can trust and being somebody people can rely upon, which is just about doing the things that other people won't because they're not efficient, or they're not sexy, they're not cool. There's nothing fancy about being in like a cruddy room with bean bags developing for a 12-hour hackathon. But it can lead to good opportunities, and sort of that's my advice that I had on projects is that focus not necessarily on what is the most efficient, because people can detect if you're just trying to fill them. Like that's not going to build the right reputation. It's not going to build, especially if you don't come from a well-connected background. I think just focusing what interests you, and focusing on what is the thing that you could help the people the most through is what's going to come out well. Because I could have said no to tutoring for that professor for 2 hours for like $20, because I could have spent that time working. I could have spent the time to doing online courses, better myself. But he was a good professor, and I wanted to help, and that's how I got one of the biggest projects I've ever had, right? So trying to put yourself out there, even if you're uncomfortable, even if it's not ideal, even if it's something like this is kind of lame. If it means that you're going to be helping somebody in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we, like you said, it's a lot of luck, but at a certain point, you kind of create the opportunities for lucky things to happen to you, right? Or to be in the right place.
You're not going to get lucky if you stay in your room all day.
Right. So I love that advice for students. Put yourself out there and do the things that aren't necessarily glamorous, right? Get your hands dirty, help people out, really listen and ask questions, be curious about the world, and specialize, and follow that path and educate yourself about something that you'll be able to speak on better than anyone else, because that kind of luck is the luck that you made, right? That something lucky happens, like a job opens up. It may be out of your control, but it is in your control to be ready when that happens. That sort of thing. So to wrap up a bit.
Hello, Ashlie. Can you hear me?
Yep. So to wrap up, last conference we launched kind of in response to all of these shelter-in-place orders. A lot of our students and a lot of my activities was based around helping organize in-person events. And I believe I was supposed to travel to a conference in Milwaukee that got canceled the week of. They made the hard but very great decision to keep our community safe. And we wanted to take it as an opportunity to pause and reflect and reimagine what could be possible. And it seems in the last 3 months, we've only seen more of our systems failed responses to the pandemic, money being printed, political strife here and abroad. So we wanted this theme to be disrupting the system, and wanted to hear from our students and all of our interviewees. What are the blockchain use cases that you are most excited about, or you think have the most potential to create new systems that would benefit more people?
Yeah, I think the 3 biggest ones are going to be digital identity, just because the future seems to be in technology. It's about having all of your services be deeply integrated with each other. And that's going to be really key to be able to make it work cohesively. It's going to be orchestration, and then it's orchestration, that's going to be part of that, is being able to have multiple different smart contracts and multiple different services that can be composed together to achieve a much, much larger effect. And the last one is just going to be the insights and the data insights you're going to be able to get through the distributed systems that blockchain can provide. That's was a big part about the project and research we were doing at Toyota, is that we need to be able to still have the efficiency and the data and just the power of our current supply chain system without it having be so frail that any single moment and it just gets destroyed into oblivion, right? So I think that last point is that the data insights that blockchain can provide is going to be key to be able to maintain some level of the maintain the efficiency that we currently have while increasing the resilience of our supply chains.
Absolutely. So for anyone just tuning in, this is Reimagine 2020 version 2, Disrupting the System. Luis Osta was just sharing with us some of the advancements and blockchain use cases that he believes will really transform our society. And I just want to direct everyone to the interview with Eric Pinos from Ontology for this session. His new position is he's the digital identity product manager. So Ontology is doing some really interesting stuff with digital identity. So make sure to head to our YouTube channel and check out the interview with Ontology that I did. And once again, thank you so much, Luis, for hopping on and giving so much great advice to our students who may be graduating, wanting to start their own companies. Thank you very much. And we'll be back with more content from Reimagine 2020 version 2.
Take care, everyone.